So welcome everybody to this second of 3 conversations about racism and meeting Howard Thurman, who is a pastor and theologian and amazing man. So as we get started, I'm going to mute y'all, and I like to say, please don't take it personally. Just unmute. You have the freedom. And so let's pray. Holy God, we are grateful for your church, Canyon Creek, for where we are on this walk, and for how your spirit is moving. Our world is hurting and in trouble, and your church needs to be relevant. And so be with us here as we meet Howard Thurman and hear what he has to say. It may have been decades ago, but it is so relevant for us today. So speak through him, open our minds and our hearts, and we are yours. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, well, I'm going to share my screen and we will get started. I want to ensure that someone asked, was last week recorded? Yes, it was. And you can get to it on our YouTube channel or through the website on online opportunities, and look up SCAR, the Safe Conversation About Racism. And it's there in that description about SCAR 6. And before I really get started, I just need to let you know that SCAR 7, which is the Glory on the Lawn, is postponed to May 6th because it's going to rain all day Thursday. So May 6th, here we go again. Our third time is a charm. We just know that. So this week we're going to be talking about a universal morality and how we need to be freed from fear to have that kind of perspective. And I want to speak a minute about the safe conversations in your breakout groups. You know, they aren't recorded. I hope you use those to make a safe place for one another, to come as you are to the conversation. And there is no judgment. We're just meeting one another where we are about a difficult and painful topic. So, but what the part in the main session will be recorded. So if you want to be offline on that, we'll hang on for a few minutes after 8, and you can ask any questions there, and we'll turn record off. So, okay. So last week we talked about how Thurman, this metaphor about having our backs against the wall, that the disinherited have their backs against the wall, and that God chose the wall for Jesus to be born to. So the idea of being backed up, powerless, and pushed up against a wall, and Thurman's point is that Jesus was born into a power structure, which was the structure of Rome, the Roman Empire, which was lording it over the Jewish people. And not only that, but Jesus was a poor Jew, and that he said that before anyone could accomplish anything in that setting, they had to think first of, how do I think of Rome? How do I, what sense do I make of Rome and myself in that context? And then he talks about how that is he says, Negro experience, the Black experience. And so last week, as part of our discussion, we had a breakout that it's like, well, how do we have our backs against the wall? When have we had our backs against the wall, and what does that mean? And so I invite anyone who might have had additional additional thoughts about that to speak. I have some more thoughts, but I thought that we might share them. Anyone who's thought more about what it means to have our backs against the wall? We're good. Okay. So I'm gonna go back to this. What really occurred to me is that sorry, I'm having trouble finding a little place for my strip of people here. Is that I have, I talked last week that I couldn't hardly relate to having my back against the wall. That when I was raised, my parents said, you can be anything you want, and basically there were no real barriers, no fences, as Andy would say after his sermon on Sunday. But I think that the idea of being with our backs against the wall is a powerlessness. And so I think anytime that we sort of get to the end of our resources, we get to the end of ourselves, like how we thought all this worked isn't working any longer, and we kind of come to the end of ourselves. That could come with just realization that life is kind of bigger than what we thought. It could come with failure. It could come with a diagnosis of something threatening like cancer, where we are all of a sudden powerless and our back is against the wall. It will come for all of us at death's door. And so last week we talked a little bit about how it's hard to relate to people whose backs are against the wall. And so I just wanted to kind of open that up a little bit more, to maybe more understanding of, maybe we can understand it a little bit more when we're just sort of out of resources, out of control, and we are a victim of something larger than ourselves. Anyway, just more thoughts that I had on that I wanted to share. So we considered last week how the playing field is slanted, and for me, you slide all the way down this thing, and this is the wall right here, and people who are not as fortunate end up being down at this end. Okay, and I wondered after Andy's sermon, where are the invisible fences? I thought maybe there's a fence right here, but there may be fences kind of all the way up this thing. It's so hard to travel this whole deal to get a goal at this end, while gravity is on our side. So anyway, there are some limits to this metaphor, because I don't think it really is a battle against one another. So it's not that we win over someone, or maybe it is. Maybe it is. Consider that maybe what if we were all trying to shoot for the top goal? It would just be a lot farther to get there, and a long uphill for people who have been disadvantaged from the beginning. So just some additional thoughts that I had on that. And at the end of last week's, if you haven't heard it, I do encourage you to go back, because it was really powerful, powerful teaching from Thurman. But he talked about, in one of his sermons, he talked about the woman caught in adultery. And he talked about how, of course, her back was against the wall, right? She was caught in adultery. Everyone was coming at her, maybe with stones. And Jesus kind of derailed that whole thing and made that playing field level by saying, "Whoever is without sin, cast the first stone." And the way that Thurman described it to me, I think, is a metaphor that's really important. And he said to her, he said that what Jesus said to the woman was, "I don't condemn you either. Go and sin no more." And by doing that, he held a crown above her head. And forevermore, she was trying to grow taller to be able to fully wear that crown. Oh my gosh. I think that is the most beautiful image. And what he also said, I want to revisit it because it was so powerful. So this is his actual text. He met the woman where she was and dealt with her there as if she were where she should have been. And in so doing, he believed her into the fulfillment of a possibility. He placed a crown over her head so that for the rest of her life, she was trying to grow tall enough to wear that crown. And then he said to these people that he was preaching to love is to meet people where they are. Mean, distorted, sometimes evil, sometimes vicious, sometimes full of hate, and to deal with them there. And to do so has to free them, and it frees you. So he is calling. I just want to make it a really important point. I mean, it's always good to call people into being, and he's doing it, but he's calling his the people he's mentoring, the Negroes, the Blacks that are disinherited, just like Jesus did, the people with their backs against the wall. He's calling them into being. He's believing them into being, but he's also calling them to believe their oppressors into being. And that's what I want to spend a little time on. I think that persecutors, you would think that they were at the top end of that slanted field. But I think that there is a way in which the persecutors have their backs to their own wall. They would not see it. They would not define it that way because they don't see the chains that are binding them. They don't understand the prison of evil that they're in or their need for freedom from it. They are in ways the walking dead, consumed by hate. And they're hiding, many of them are hiding behind a hood. Now, when I worked at Parkland as a chaplain, I was meeting people with their backs against the wall all the time. And that was an amazing experience. I did not want to be in a church because I felt like we don't realize the walls that we have backs against, that we are back up against. And we can't really see maybe what is imprisoning us as easily as someone who is who has less. I just want to think about it. So I see a chat. We are sorry, but something came up. Okay, bye, Ann and John. So let's see. Want to share my screen again? Sorry, can't get there. There it is.
Ellen.
Yes.
I'm sorry I wasn't able to attend last week, but it strikes me that back against the wall is that feeling of you can't retreat anymore, but I guess you could go side to side. Whereas if you're cornered, I guess that's when you hear about animals like, becoming violent, or people maybe even becoming violent. But it's kind of interesting to think about back against the wall versus really being in a corner where you really have no way to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Ooh. Okay. So let's see. So the idea also of the ones who are in power having backs against this invisible wall that's kind of pushing them back. So I want to share a story. So speaking of the of believing people into being, this concept is so important. And here we are. This church is called to build relationships wherever we go. And this is that, believing people into being. And I believe it's the conduit, the most clear conduit of grace, because someone with their back against the wall can't necessarily think of themselves as worth anything, because the information they have is that they're not. And so listen to this story about Thurman's grandmother. He says, when I was a youngster, it was drilled into my head by my grandmother. The idea was given, oh, let me go back, I'm sorry, scooting back. The first question has to do with a basic self-estimate, a profound sense of belonging, of counting. If a man feels he does not belong in the way in which it is perfectly normal for other people to belong, then he develops a deep sense of insecurity. When this happens to a person, it provides a basic material for what the psychologist calls an inferiority complex. It is quite possible for a man to have no sense of personal inferiority as such, but at the same time to be dogged by a sense of social inferiority. The awareness of being a child of God tends to stabilize the ego and results in new courage, fearlessness, and power. I've seen it happen again and again. When I was a youngster, this was drilled into me by my grandmother. The idea was given to her by a certain slave minister who on occasion held secret religious meetings with his fellow slaves. How everything in me quivered with the pulsing tremor of raw energy when, in her recital, she would come to the triumphant climax of the minister, saying, you are not niggers. You are not slaves. You are God's children. This established for them the ground of personal dignity so that a profound sense of personal worth could absorb the fear reaction. This alone is not enough, but without it, nothing else is of value. The first task is to get the self immunized against the most radical results of the threat of violence. When this is accomplished, relaxation takes the place of churning fear. The individual now feels that he counts and he belongs. He senses the confirmation of his roots, and even death becomes a little thing. I just think that is like the most beautiful and profound teaching that breathes life into those who do not know it. And so I'd like for you to take a picture of this. Whoops, sorry. Someone just delivered an Amazon package on our door. Okay, I'm now protected. So yeah, take a picture of the screen here, and I'm gonna break y'all into breakout sessions. There's several questions to talk about, and the idea of who believed you into being. Did everybody get the picture of it, or you good? Okay, so here we go, breakout sessions, and there we go. And so just hit join, and we'll see y'all in a few minutes. Welcome back.
That seemed like a long 12 minutes.
It was less than the 20 minutes I said.
Oh, no wonder. We thought it was 12, or maybe she meant we had 12 left. I thought maybe you were opening your Amazon package or something.
No. Did you get bored?
No. But I think we just discussed it as far as we could get.
There you go.
Mhm.
Well, apparently
We
the others are
affirm we
talking.
need
a lot more.
guidance from the church to know how to do this in our area.
Yeah.
Say that again. I think that was good. Go for it.
Our group affirms that we need guidance from the church leadership in order to know how to make relationships in our area.
Right. Yes.
I mean,
Well, and I think, oh, go ahead.
because we were saying, I mean, I know we make brief contact, I do like in the medical field all the time, going to doctors and, because that way, or the grocery store, well, I hadn't been in a grocery store in a while, but I mean, like the contacts that count, that might be sustained or whatever.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah. And so I think that that this thirst for that or whatever is just where we need to be, because that's what we're looking at going into and discerning what that would look like, and I will be very surprised if it's not if we don't have lots of opportunities in our building to be in relationship with folks that where this is what we're, it's what we're about, is helping folks over the barriers. Yeah. And I love that there is a great thirst for it. That's what I hear. Yeah. Any other comments from their breakout? Okie doke. Let me, so I think that a point that Thurman made that is really important to look into is basically his own, because he had his own value. He inherently was calling others to live into theirs, and the idea of having to break past fear is part of that. And this is one of the quotes in the book: if a man knows precisely what he can do to you, or what epithet he can hurl against you in order to make you lose your temper, your equilibrium, then he can always keep you under subjection. Excuse me. It's a man's reaction to things that determines their ability to exercise power over him. Now, you might think about this also as the guy going down the freeway that cuts you off. You can. It's like we don't have to react, but the idea of overcoming fear, I think, also goes both ways. people whose backs are against the wall, who have been oppressed and abused, are very fearful. But then there's also a creation of fear on the other side. So the fear has to be overcome on both sides. And I think so. I think that Thurman's call speaks to us as well. The idea of not being defined by fear. This is Bambi, I don't know, but you've got to understand fear. And he talks about how fear is a safety device that with which the oppressed surround themselves in order to give some measure of protection, so they don't have complete collapse. I mean, his wording, I find it quite profound because it's very hard for me to relate. But so they make their bodies commit to memory ways of behaving that tend to reduce their exposure to violence. And I just thought, to me, that was just interesting. But he compares it to Bambi, the story of Bambi. The children, he says, the children of the disinherited live a restricted childhood. From their earliest moments, they are conditioned so as to reduce their exposure to violence. In the story Bambi, the old stag counsels Bambi, giving to him a great detail of pattern and behavior that will reduce his chance of being shot without an opportunity for escape. He teaches him to distinguish human scent, the kinds of exposure that may be deadly, and what precise behavior is relatively safe. And the stag is unwilling to leave Bambi until he is sure that the young deer has made his body commit to memory ways of behaving that will protect and safeguard his life. That was just a profound, I guess, learning for me that this was, kind of defines the kids of an entire people. You can see how that builds over time even bigger walls because the fear is there. You see what I'm saying? It may be just helping us understand a little bit more something that we don't necessarily know how to relate to.
Police is not a white thing, it's a black thing. And
Yes, say that again.
I said fear of police is not a white experience, it's a black experience. And bless them. And we certainly see that in our society right now.
Yes, absolutely. And Andy's sermon, oh my goodness, if you haven't heard it, it is so right on and speaks directly to that. So these artificial.
Can I, Ellen, can I just say?
Yeah.
I'm not sure who was just speaking, but I wanted to speak to that point. You say the fear of police. And I just want to share an experience as a kid. I grew up in low income housing neighborhood. And I remember all the time, quite frequently, the police would come through our neighborhood and they would drive past us slowly and wave and probably go up the street and then come back and they'd park. And usually it was a white police officer and he would open up his trunk and he would have things in his trunk to give us.
Wow.
And we just sit out and talk. He'd pull out a football, he'd throw it around or play around, or he'd let us use his the siren and show us different things in the car and things like that. And somewhere along the lines, that stopped happening.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I know a lot of Black America is saying is that we need people in our neighborhoods, one who either grew up in our neighborhoods, two, but are familiar and not afraid. So that fear thing definitely goes both ways. But somewhere along the lines, some point it stopped. That those cops, they stopped coming through the neighborhoods and just waving, you know, building those relationships with the kids, because even when they knew people were doing things illegal, they didn't stop and harass, or, it was, if I see you doing it, but there was some kind of relationship.
Yeah.
Along the line somewhere, they stopped.
Yeah.
It's like they knew that those kids were more than the worst thing they could do, right?
Amen. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Great.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing those stories. Yeah. And the idea, oh, go ahead.
Well, at Gateway of Grace one time, it's been a while now because we were in person then. They did have so the Dallas police came in. They have a PR department kind of thing, and they came and they talked to the women there and talked to them about, I mean, it was the whole department is, kind of speaking to what Brandy's saying, is to try to make some of these relationships better than they've been in the past. And, so it's hard to change all these bad things that the police have, or the bad feelings, I guess, that people have toward the police.
Yeah.
That, they're trying a few different things. I don't know. It's hard to know sometimes what to do.
Yeah.
I think they need to change the way they do a lot of things in policing and in general. But you do still need policing. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, and building bridges that the relationships, the connecting with a person, that we see them as a person. Everybody is looking more at people as they are people, not not an ogre, not a less than, not a greater than, none of that.
It was really important for those women at Gateway of Grace who've come from, the Middle East and have such horrific things happen to them, to see police there that were trying to be friendly and trying to
wow,
bring them up, uphold their value, just make them feel valued, I guess.
Yeah.
And say, you can call us for different, they were also, it's like, call us for major things, there's other numbers you can call for minor things, but but
we're here. We're here
if
for
you
you.
need someone helping you.
Yeah, that's great. Yes. So yeah, the idea of artificial limits being placed on both sides by fear, and removing that. So the idea of being freed from the small step of being despised to despising oneself. It's like he talks about this. There's just a small step from being despised to despising oneself, and being freed from that because you have that basic self-estimate that we're talking about. And that it lifts a mere man to a place of preeminence that belongs to God alone. I just want to read very quickly what a man's conviction that he is God's child automatically tends to shift the basis of his relationship with all his fellows. He recognizes at once that to fear a man, whatever may be that man's power over him, is a basic denial of the integrity of his very life. I think that's so huge. And here is Thurman trying to give folks that value, that understanding that you are, because you belong to God, there is no more limitation, basically. He who fears is literally delivered to destruction, but to the child of God, a scale of values becomes available by which men are measured and their true significance determined. So anyway, it's just, to me, it's just beautiful, the hope that he gives for folks who have thought themselves worthless. And so this is the picture of believing into being. Here's what he says: there is something more to be said about the inner equipment of growing out of the great affirmation of Jesus that a man is a child of God. If a man's ego is stabilized, resulting in a sure grounding of his sense and personal worth and dignity, then he is in a position to appraise his own intrinsic powers, gifts, talents, and abilities. He no longer views his equipment through darkened lenses of those who are largely responsible for his social predicament. He can think of himself with a measure of detachment from the shackles of his immediate world. If he equips himself in terms of training in this mood, his real ability is brought into play. So he's freed. He's freed to be who he is. And so I just think that the other side of this is that someone who is freed in that way takes risks in calling oppressors to task. And we see what is, loving your enemies. Here it is in Matthew from the Beatitudes. You've heard it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy, but I say love your enemies. And this treatment of people, seeing them as God would see them and call them forward, is transforming. And now this form of being, of love, was pretty much dropped in later years by the Black movement as a major cause, unfortunately, it was more just about power, and the morality was not the goal, I guess, which is a huge loss, I think. Any comments about the idea of believing people into being? It's of what that the transformation that can give.
Could I speak something? I think you have to be invited to do something like that. If you go in with, I'm going to carry the white man's burden to these underprivileged people, it's condescending and off-putting. And I
Absolutely.
Got to be real careful with that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think the idea of meeting people where they are, of seeing, of seeing the value in the person. I don't know if you saw the one from last week, but there was an example in that of, that I experienced with a guy that we picked up to help do my yard. And I called him Wayne in the description last week. But yeah, it's being willing to meet him where he is, and not fit into the mold that he might want you to have, which is pretty much solving my problems. I want you to give me money. I mean, that's I can't do that, but I can value you. I can take you to lunch. I can hear you. I can get to know you, and I can try to help mitigate barriers and see what possibilities are there. And so I think the more we are able to do that, it's huge, 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 huge. I want to close with part of Thurman's sermon on brotherhood. I just think it is very profound. I'll share my screen so we can get the captions going. Here we go.
To redefine brotherhood means to take it out of the ethical category, out of the category of morality and its experience, and place it at the center of man's experience of God. God is the Father of all men. And if God be the Father of all men, then it is through my experience of the Father that I become aware of the brother. So who is a Samaritan? Who is a tax collector? Who is a Roman? Who is my mother or my father? I enter into the brotherhood through the experience of the God who is the Father of all. And if I approach the brotherhood on the basis of any other category, I can't love.
Which speaks exactly to what Troy said. If I approach the brotherhood on any other category, if I'm here to bring something to them that they don't have, if I'm here to fix a situation, if I'm here to level a playing field, if I am here to anything but meet you where you are in love, because we got the same daddy, then we're not loving. But it's about love. So,
Ellen, I also had a thought that the building relationships in most ways has to be one to one. I mean, person to person. And I'm thinking of, I think it was years ago, went to Austin Street and was, or somewhere we were sort of serving. And I think I said, how are you guys doing? And that putting them all sort of in the same category, one guy didn't like that. He said something like, you know, I'm not like these guys, or I'm my own self or something. So I thought that was a pretty significant point, that sometimes we try to do the group thing, but it really isn't focusing on that one person, and it does tend to sort of have a broad brush. So just
yeah,
wanted to point that out.
there are no shortcuts. There are no shortcuts to this. You know, I get the sense that we're frustrated with talking. I want to do. I do think that part of what we're doing is doing, because when we're doing, we want to do it right. You know, we want to have the training, the perspective, the like, you know, I never thought about, you know, you're telling me that you that you don't have a car, you don't have a cell phone, you're trying to get work. I've seen the value of work you can do, but you don't have all these things, and I can't relate. So what is helpful? I've not been with my back against the wall. You see what I'm saying? And to be able to have some of the vocabulary, to be able to say, the only time that I was, I see that you are limited on resources, and I'd like to help. I don't know how, but the only time I was in this situation, I just remember feeling absolutely powerless. So it must feel, so you see, you're meeting them. Having some of that vocabulary opens relationship and levels the playing field, whether that's what we're shooting for or not. If we just meet them. And so I think having some of that perspective and vocabulary is important. So in that way, I think we're doing now.
Ellen, can I just say, I'm listening to
Yeah.
a lot of the comments, and one thing stuck out. I know you said, people are tired of talking and they're ready to do. And part of building relationships is meeting people where they are. And I know you said part of that is you're in the doing is the talking. And you said training. But one thing I would say, and I guess I would encourage everybody, is I've never trained for a relationship with anybody. So part of having a relationship with people who you're not familiar with, or a person, or whatever that might be, is just do it. Just do it. You can be intentional without looking for how can I help. When I don't remember the last time I met somebody and said, "Hi, my name is so-and-so. How can I help you?" Except for when I was working in retail. So I think it's more of a genuine, I guess, intention of being and not trying, because you don't have to try when you're building relationships. I mean, you can try to build a relationship, but if it still needs to be that genuine, without a, what can I do to help? Without because that will come. In any relationship that you're in, you got to get to know the person.
So I guess what I was trying to say,
no, go ahead.
No, you were saying, I thought you were done. And then what?
Go ahead. No, I was just saying, and then once you get to know a person for their name, for their personality, and you have that friendship, that then will come, the helping and the being there for them is that will come, because like you're saying, people have to want you to want to help them.
Right.
And somebody like me, if I don't know you, I'm not asking you for anything. You know what I mean? Like, I have to know you in order to open up, and I have to know you to get to that point. So I think the point is, just like when people want to build relationships, they put themselves in the gym. Oh, I'm going to meet people there, and I'm going to enjoy going to the gym. That's going to be my thing. Or I'm going to join this club, or this, I don't know, whatever glee club or whatever that is. They go there for the relationship first, and then they build that community and that connection.
I think that's, I agree with what you're saying. I think that that there is a fear on the part of I don't know everybody, but I would say, and I don't necessarily want to speak for all whites or anything, but I think there's a fear of screwing it up, of saying something that's going to be offensive. And so I do think that there is some training in understanding differences in culture, like why we did the SCAR thing that you led to help us understand the culture more. There is some training in understanding that I really am not different. How am I not different? Well, I have had my back against the wall. It's like not that that is the defining thing. It's just what Howard Thurman is doing. So that's why we're studying that, but it is a historical, problem, and to be able to see that and to be able to see it from another's perspective, I think that's where the training comes, is beginning to understand a world that is different from yours. And some people need that. That may come naturally to some people, but I think I can guarantee you it did not come naturally to me. I needed a remedial work in my chaplain training. It was supposed to be a 3-month course, and I just went ahead and did a whole nother year of it. So maybe I'm the only one who needs the remedial work, but I'm happy to share it with others who it may help.
I think it's real hard to leave behind the white privilege and the unavoidable sort of one-up position that we have by virtue of being white. It's real hard to deal with that and meet people as equals rather than as the how can I help you sort of one-up position. Meet them as equals, not as helpers, not as charitable givers, not as any of that, but just as people.
Yeah,
that's tough.
Yes, and to kind of have your own understanding of what the privilege, what does that mean for me? What is that to me, and why is this? You can come up against. You may not understand why someone is really tired. The more you look, the more you'll understand. But if you're just hit with that, and you're hit with the anger, when you feel like you didn't do anything, that's the train, is to see the other perspective. It's not about me. It's not about me. It's about trying to meet you, whoever you are, white, black, anything, anyone. It's not about me. That's what we do. That's what we train the deacons to do. You put your crap on the hook before you walk in the room, so you can meet the person where they are.
Yeah,
so.
And it's tough to put white on the rack before you go in the room.
It's hard. It's tough to put white on the rack.
It is.
Yeah, it
is. I'm pretty successful with that, I think, with kids, but with grownups, that's tougher.
Yeah. So I didn't mean to counter you, but I feel like that's where I'm coming.
Yeah,
from.
I think that's you made some good points, because while I think that we as in Black people, we look at white privilege differently than what you all look at it.
Mm-hmm.
There is there is no intention to make white people feel guilty for being privileged, no more than it is for a rich person or the Queen of England to feel guilty for how she grew up. That's just what was dealt to her, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's nothing, it's not that, it's more of a plea to recognize it and use it to help those who don't have it. And I know I hear a lot of times people will say, well, I'm tired of feeling attacked because I'm privileged, or I'm not privileged because I grew up a certain way. But we are talking about, if you walk into a store and I walk into a store, who is more likely to be followed? Those are the things we're talking about. And, you know, I don't know how it will change. And maybe that feeling of being privileged in that way is a burden, and it's not intended for it to be. Where we're trying to make it a wake-up call, you know, hey, see, this is happening, and not necessarily you're better. That you can't help how you were born. You can't help how America has been, you know, how the world has been, or whatever. And
Yeah.
but I do understand you saying, you know, being prepared, but being prepared to deal with people from different cultures, different backgrounds, everything. It's just, I don't know if you can be prepared for that. I really don't know. You can't, because there could be something, and if you were, you know, if I just from my class, there could be something that is completely harmless to you, but you could say that could offend me. And it could go both ways. You know, there could be something that I completely understand, and you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But I think, again, that being present and listening and watching, you know, from, for example, you might see, okay, I'll use myself for an example. If I get loud, or I raise my voice, or I project my voice, a lot of my people wouldn't be threatened by it, or would just call it passion. A lot of other people might say I'm aggressive. That's understanding, but you wouldn't know that unless you're amongst it, unless you're engaging and having those relationships. But I didn't think about the idea of preparing, but I don't think you ever be prepared, because there's always going to be something, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a bunch of junk to let go of. And thank you for stepping out and giving us a glimpse and sharing.
Yeah,
And
Ellen, one more thing on that. What I hear Brandy saying is that we can try to be prepared and do our best, but it shouldn't keep us from engaging in a genuine relationship, or just opening the conversation. Let's not hold back until we're trained to do that, right?
Oh, absolutely not. No, absolutely not.
It's just like preparing for kids. People say, oh, well, I want to save up, and I want to do this before I have kids. You'll never be ready. Just do it. You know,
nothing can prepare you for this.
You'll never be prepared.
But just like having kids, love, man, the love covers all the rest of it. Yeah.
And accepting them the way they are.
Yeah.
Because we all come into this world with a definite personality.
Yeah. Well, y'all, we're over.
Thank you, Brandy.
Thank you for the conversation. And we'll see you later. Take care.